This happened last month. I was working the late shift at a fast food joint, just trying to pay off my college debt. I figured it would be a decent way to save up for film school. The place was always a little strange at night, but I enjoyed meeting odd characters while flipping burgers. One night it got really weird. I remember it was slow. The parking lot, lit by a flickering streetlight, felt uneasy. Around midnight, a car rolled through the drive-thru. It didn't make a sound. My gut twisted. Something felt off, and I couldn't shake the chill creeping over me. The speaker crackled, and I heard a voice. "I'll have the double cheeseburger, no pickles, and a medium fry." There was no emotion in it. It sounded like a robot. I put together the order, trying to just hang on to my sanity. When I handed over the bag, I glanced at the driver. They were wearing a heavy hood that shadowed their face. I couldn't see their eyes, but I knew they were staring. My heart started racing, but I tried to convince myself it was just a normal late-night customer. As the night wore on, things got stranger. I was in the kitchen washing dishes when I heard whispers. It sounded like a group of people murmuring, but there was no one there. Goosebumps crept along my arms. I felt unnerved and alone. Another car pulled up soon after. They wanted a screaming hot sandwich. I stood there blinking in confusion. I nodded and went through the motions, making the order. But when I brought it out, they were gone. It was like they vanished into thin air. No sound of tires, nothing. A knot formed in my stomach. Food started going missing from the kitchen, too. I turn around and see an empty shelf when I knew something had just been there. I thought maybe I was losing it. I felt like I was in a bad horror movie. Every time the drive-thru speaker crackled, I hesitated. I kept seeing those blank eyes in my mind. I couldn't shake the idea that something was very wrong in this place. Each car that pulled up made my instincts scream. I knew something dark was lurking. Then came that last car. It was just past 2, and the night felt thick. I heard the speaker crackle again. "I want the night special," the voice said. My skin crawled. I wondered what that meant. I pulled together the order, my hands shaking. When I turned to hand it over, I gasped. The driver had turned their head, and I caught a glimpse of their face. Their features were twisted, like a shadow of something human. My heart raced as I instinctively stepped back. I fumbled the food, and in that moment, they were gone. The car sat empty at the window. I couldn't breathe. I stood there, staring into the darkness, unsure what had happened. That feeling of wrongness wrapped around me again. It was deep, and it was cold. I didn't want to think about what other customers might show up next. My mind raced as I tried to figure it all out. But something told me I wasn't ready for the answer. I couldn't shake the image of that twisted face from my mind as I stood frozen at the drive-thru window. With my heart pounding, I took a deep breath, trying to convince myself this was just a nightmare that would soon fade. But no, the weight of the night pressed down on me, heavy and suffocating. Slowly, I turned back to the kitchen. My shift was far from over, and I still had to deal with whatever else might come through that speaker. I started washing dishes, my hands moving mechanically, but my mind was racing. I thought maybe I should call someone, but who would believe me? "Hey, I think the customers might be ghosts." Ridiculous. As the clock ticked, I kept glancing toward the drive-thru. No more cars had appeared, but the whispers returned, low and frantic. They danced around me, seeming to echo from the walls. I couldn't understand the words, but the tone was urgent, filled with a blend of fear and desperation. I tried to shut it out, but it only grew louder, clawing at my sanity. Suddenly, the overhead light blinked. I looked up, startled, and the hum of the fryer seemed to distort and stretch into an eerie groan. My hands shook, and I dropped a plate. It shattered, sending a shock through my nerves. I was losing control. I fought the urge to run, forcing myself to stay put. Then, the drive-thru speaker crackled again. "I want a cursed combo," the voice ordered. It was the same, flat tone as before, Yet this time it seemed to ripple through the air, sending chills down my spine. I wanted to scream that I wasn't making that. Instead, I found myself nodding, even though the words caught in my throat. Limping to the grill, I gathered the ingredients, my mind racing. What on earth was a cursed combo? I tossed the fries into the fryer, staring at the bubbling oil as if it could offer me an answer. The murmuring grew louder as I flipped the patties. Panic shot through me. Was I supposed to serve this? I carried the tray back to the drive-through window. As I reached to hand it over, a movement caught my eye. I froze. From behind the car, a shadow materialized, a figure creeping out from the darkness. The orange glow of the streetlight illuminated just enough for me to see the outlines. It was the figure of a child. The boy looked lost, standing there under the flickering light. His clothes were tattered, and his eyes were wide, pleading. I wanted to help him, but something about him felt wrong, too. "Are you okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He blinked as if surprised I could see him, then whispered, "I need to eat." All the fear from before came rushing back. I opened my mouth to call for help, but the sound vanished. In an instant, he let out a giggle, an innocent laugh that echoed in the silence, but it felt deeply unsettling. Then everything went dark. The lights in the restaurant flickered out, and the hum of machines died. I felt a rush of cold air sweep through the building, making me shiver. The whispers escalated into frantic shouts, and I realized I was utterly alone. My breath caught. Where was the boy? Where was everyone? The darkness told me something was coming, something I couldn't face alone. The silence was deafening, wrapping around me like a thick fog. I stumbled back, the tray slipping from my grip and crashing to the ground. The sound echoed in the emptiness, rattling my nerves. I felt my heart race, each beat pounding in my ears. The whispers morphed into tangible voices, a cacophony that swirled around me. I tried to focus on one, but they all bled together. "Help us," a voice pleaded. "Feed us," another echoed. I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. This couldn't be happening. It had to be my imagination, a side effect of fatigue and stress. I edged toward the front of the restaurant, heart racing, the darkness thickening with every step. I strained my ears, listening for any sign of life. Nothing. It was as if the world outside had vanished. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I fished it out and found I had no signal. Panic surged through me. Then, from the corner of my eye, I caught a flicker of movement. The child was back, standing by the entrance. His face was obscured, but those wide, pleading eyes glimmered in the faint light of the exit sign. My gut twisted. Was he real, or a figment of the darkness? "Come play," he said, his voice airy and soft, like a breath of wind. He beckoned with a small hand, drawing me closer. It didn't sit right, but an overwhelming urge to help him pulled at me. Before I could process it, I took a step forward. "Where did you come from?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though it quavered. "Are you lost?" He shook his head slowly, then pointed toward the kitchen. "I want to eat, but it's not ready." The innocent tone was still there, but there was an edge, something sinister lurking beneath. I glanced back to the kitchen. The fryer was dark, and the grill had gone cold. The food I had made sat abandoned, like offerings to some unknown force. "What do you mean?" I asked, heart thudding heavier with each beat. A soft giggle floated through the air again, making my skin crawl. "Everything is ready." He was suddenly closer, just a shadow's breath away. "It's all waiting for you." "What's waiting for me?" I inhaled sharply, feeling a sense of dread settle in the pit of my stomach. His eyes narrowed, playfulness turning into something darker. "You'll know soon." A chill raced through me. I turned to run, but the darkness felt alive, wrapping around my legs, pulling me back. I stumbled, falling hard against the floor. The child stood above me, now towering like a silhouette against the faint light. "Stay and play," he whispered. "You can't leave, not yet." Just then, I heard a loud crash from the back of the kitchen. It felt like a warning, a break in the fabric of silence. My pulse quickened. I couldn't stay here. I needed to get out. I mustered my strength and pushed myself to my feet, ignoring the boy as he started to laugh again. I sprinted toward the front door, grabbing the handle. It wouldn't budge. I turned around. The boy was gone. But the laughter lingered, echoing through the empty space. Then, as if summoned, the lights flickered back on. I held my breath, scanning the room, desperate to confirm I wasn't losing my mind. That's when I saw it. A figure stood at the drive-through window, watching me. A familiar face twisted in an unfamiliar grin. I froze at the sight, dread flooding my veins. Who was it? Why were they here? I needed answers, but all I felt was the weight of impending doom. My heart thudded in my chest as I stared at the figure. The dim light flickered above, casting shadows across their features. I strained to make out their face, but it was like trying to focus on a mirage. As I squinted, a rush of recognition washed over me. It was Alex, an old coworker. But something was very wrong. His eyes were wide, almost unblinking, and his smile twisted unnaturally into something that looked forced. "Been waiting for you," he said, his voice slow and deliberate, oozing a sickly sweetness. "Alex?" I managed to croak out. My throat felt tight. "What are you doing here?" He didn't respond with words. Instead, he turned his head slowly, pointing toward the kitchen entrance. "They need help. You have to come." A chill crept up my spine. My instincts screamed at me to resist, yet curiosity and a flicker of concern for my friend pulled me closer. "Need help with what?" He leaned closer to the glass, his breath fogging the surface. "With dinner. Dinner is always the most important meal." Heart pounding, I glanced back toward the kitchen. A darkness seemed to pulse behind the doors. I could hear faint sounds, a low hum that resembled laughter mixed with something else, a chilling chant pulling at the edges of my mind. "What happened to you?" I asked, stepping back from the window. "You look different." He chuckled, a low, guttural sound that sent shivers racing across my skin. "They gifted me a new perspective. I see things differently now." I shook my head, desperately trying to dispel the rising panic. "I think I should go. I turned back toward the front door, hoping it would finally yield to my desperate attempts. I twisted the handle again and again, but it remained firm. "Stay!" Alex's voice rose sharply, breaking through the haze. "You can't leave yet. Not until they get what they want." The terror in me surged. I glanced to the kitchen, feeling the weight of unseen eyes watching from the shadows. "What do they want?" "They're hungry," he hissed, eyes gleaming with an unsettling hunger. "You should be too. Come find out." Before I could form a response, a sudden crash echoed from the back of the restaurant. Different from before, much louder. My heart raced, each pulse driven by visceral fear. What was that? "They're excited. The feast is about to begin." He leaned closer, his breath misting the glass. For a moment, I thought I saw a flash of something darker behind his gaze. A flicker of anger, perhaps. I felt trapped between two horrors, the palpable darkness lurking in the kitchen and Alex's unsettling demeanor. I took a step back, my mind racing for an escape plan. "I'm leaving, now." "Not until you play your part," he rasped, and the flickering light above us dimmed as if reticent to witness what might happen next. Just then, I heard soft pattering behind me, a faint reminder of the boy's whispers. I turned just in time to see the shadowy figure lurking at the kitchen door, eyes glistening in the dim light. The child's smile stretched impossibly wide as he beckoned me. Suddenly, everything went dark. The lights flickered off completely, plunging me into a thick, suffocating blackness. I stood frozen in the void, breathing heavy. All I could hear was the sound of my own heart pounding against the silence and that ominous whisper echoing, "Feed us." I stumbled back, disoriented in the pitch black. My pulse thundered in my ears, drowning out the whispers. A sudden rush of warm air ghosted past me, sending a shiver down my spine. I took cautious steps forward, gingerly navigating the space, hoping to find a wall or some familiar structure. Then, out of the silence, came laughter. It was high-pitched and wrong, like a distorted child's giggle. I froze, my breath hitching in my throat. "Is someone there?" I asked, my voice cracking. No response, just more laughter echoing like a taunt. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. The kitchen door creaked open slowly, revealing an even thicker darkness beyond. Shadows danced just beyond the threshold, shifting as if alive. "Alex!" I called out again, but my voice sounded small and swallowed by the gloom. Then, against the void, a faint glimmer caught my eye. A candle flickered to life in the far corner of the room, casting an eerie glow. I took a tentative step towards it. As I moved, I felt something brush against my ankle. Panic surged through me. I kicked at whatever it was, but it vanished, a whisper of a presence. I glanced down, seeing nothing but a dark floor. My pulse quickened, and I hurried toward the candle. When I reached it, the warm light flickered, revealing a table set with grotesque dishes. Piles of food spilled over, but not in a way that looked appetizing. The sight twisted my stomach into knots. Mutilated fruits, charred meats, and something that looked suspiciously like a hand, all arranged grotesquely as if waiting for guests. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness. It was a woman, her hair wild and her clothes tattered. "You shouldn't be here," she hissed, her eyes darting around wide with panic. "Who are you?" I stammered, taking a step back. "I was like you," she said, her voice trembling. "I came to help, and now I'm part of the feast." I felt sick. "What do you mean?" "They don't leave. They feed off your fear, your regret. You have to run while you can," she urged, looking over her shoulder as if expecting someone. "No, I can't. Alex, my friend. He's here. I need to help him." "Help him? He's not the same anymore." She grabbed my arm, and her grip was cold. "You don't understand. If you stay, we both become part of their hunger." Just then, the lights flickered back to life. The dining area transformed into a nightmarish tableau. The grotesque food was replaced with faces, grinning and staring hungrily, illuminated by the flickering bulbs above. I realized with a jolt that they were all familiar, coworkers, others who had vanished before. "Join us," they called in unison, mouths stretching in wide, unnatural smiles. I felt the woman tugging on my arm, desperation etching her features. "Come on, this way." Before I knew it, she was dragging me towards the kitchen. I didn't want to go, but her eyes held a truth. The shadows were shifting toward me, growing thicker, the laughter escalating in pitch. "Now!" she screamed, pulling me through the door. I didn't look back, driven by fear and the urgent need to escape. But the moment we crossed the threshold, I stumbled into a new nightmare. The air thickened, filled with a reeking stench, and I heard the guttural chant echoing louder, reverberating through the dark room. "Feed us! Feed us!" I took a deep breath and turned to run, but the kitchen erupted with shadowy figures, each one reaching out with fingers that seemed to stretch beyond natural limits. Then I heard a familiar voice behind me, cold and mocking. "Did you really think you could just leave?" I spun around, heart racing. Alex stood there, but he was different. His eyes were hollow, a twisted grin splitting his face. He didn't look like my friend anymore. "You shouldn't have come looking for me," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Alex!" I shouted, desperation clogging my throat. "You have to fight this. Remember who you are." The laughter from the shadows grew louder, cutting through the air like jagged glass. Shadowy hands clawed at my clothes, tugging me back, urging me towards the nightmare that had already claimed so many. The cold woman at my side turned to me, panic etched deep in her eyes. "You need to go. He can't be saved." I couldn't move. I didn't want to believe what I was seeing. "No!" I yelled, stepping toward Alex. "You have to listen to me. We can figure this out together." His laugh sent chills down my spine. "Figure what out? This place is glorious. Join us. You'll see." The shadows behind him danced, and I caught glimpses of other warped figures. They twisted and turned, whispering my name, promising unimaginable things. "Join us," they echoed, their voices honeyed but laced with something deadly. Suddenly, the woman yanked my arm. "We have to go now!" With a surge of adrenaline, she pulled me back towards the kitchen, the shadows shrieking in outrage. They clawed at my ankles, furious at being denied. As we reached a small door at the far side of the kitchen, I looked back at Alex. His smile was wide and hungry. "You can't escape me," he warned, his voice distorted. The shadows surged towards him, enveloping him, twisting the very fabric of his being. "Help me!" I cried out. But it was too late. Without thinking, I pushed through the door just as it slammed shut behind me. The sound echoed in the tight hallway, and I found myself in an even darker corridor that twisted like a maze. The air was thick and heavy, as if something was watching me, waiting. My heart raced as I stumbled forward, desperate for any light. "Alex!" I shouted again, but my voice sounded pitifully small. I needed to find him. I needed to pull him back from whatever darkness had taken hold of him. Then I heard another voice. A soft whisper came from the shadows, slithering around me. "Leave him be. It's better this way." My blood ran cold. "Who are you?" I demanded, turning to face the source of the voice, but saw only darkness. "Those who cannot feed are left to wander. You will become one of them if you don't let go." The weight of fear settled on my chest. I felt the shadows moving closer, closing in, whispering lies that wrapped around my mind like a noose. For a moment, I wondered if I should just give in, let the darkness consume me. But then a spark ignited inside me. No, I wouldn't give up. I had to find a way out, not just for myself, but for Alex too. Gripping my determination, I took off down the hallway, the faint sound of laughter and chanting echoing behind me. I couldn't let them win. With every step, I felt the shadows clawing at my back, the whispers growing louder. That's when I saw it, an exit sign glowing dimly in the distance. Hope bloomed in my chest as I ran toward it, but the shadows hissed, escalating in their fury. "Don't leave! Stay with us!" I pushed through the growing dread, hurtling towards the light. Just as I reached for the handle, the whispers morphed into a deafening roar. "You'll regret this." My hand hesitated, but urgency propelled me forward. I pulled open the door, feeling the warmth of the outside air hit my face. Yet, as I crossed that threshold, I realized there was no way I could escape the darkness. Not yet. The cool air hit me like a wave, but the relief didn't last long. I was outside, but it felt wrong, distorted. I turned to look back at the door I'd just come through, a part of me half expecting Alex to burst through, laughing or crying or both. But the door stood firm. No sign of him. The ground beneath my feet was uneven, gravel crunching as I walked away. Everything around me felt twisted, almost like I had stepped into a different version of reality. The trees swayed like shadows, silent except for the rustling of leaves that sounded too much like whispers. I could still hear those voices, the promise of power and glory. I shook my head, trying to dispel their influence. Suddenly, I spotted something out of place on the ground. It was a small, intricately carved box, half buried in the gravel. I knelt down to take a closer look, curiosity battling with caution. The carvings were beautiful yet eerie, depicting scenes that felt wrong. Faces twisted in pain, eyes that seemed to follow me. I reached out to touch it, my fingers grazing the surface when a violent jolt shot through me. Images flooded my mind, flashes of Alex, of shadows gathering. A battle for something I couldn't quite understand. I gasped and pulled back, my heart racing. What was happening? "Open it," whispered a voice, light and airy, contradicting the dark chaos of the previous moments. "You must know." "Who are you?" I shouted, but the voice faded. It felt like bait, an invitation into something deeper and darker. Pushing myself to my feet, I knew I needed to keep moving. Whatever had trapped Alex was still here, lurking just out of sight. I glanced around, searching for any familiar landmarks. All I saw were twisting shadows. Panic began to rise again, threatening to overwhelm me. I took off in the opposite direction, sprinting into the dim light of a nearby street. Each step felt heavier, the shadows stretching and twisting further as I ran. But then I stopped. There was a figure standing at the end of the street. A tall silhouette, all in black, arms crossed, waiting. "Come this way," it beckoned, but the voice was an echo of the darkness I had just escaped. I hesitated. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling. "You seek what was lost, don't you?" the figure replied, stepping into a thin ray of light. Beneath the dim glow, I could see it was a man, but his eyes shone an unnatural red. "I can help you." A shiver ran down my spine. My instincts screamed at me to turn and run, but I felt anchored to the spot. "Help me how?" "Come to me." The man gestured, and behind him the shadows began to swirl like a storm ready to break. I took a step back, panic swarming around me again. "No, I won't!" At that moment, a harsh voice erupted from the dark, a voice I recognized. "You can't resist forever!" It was Alex, shredding through the chaos like glass. I could only stand there, my heart racing, caught between the shadows and what was left of my best friend. The man smiled, his teeth glinting dangerously. "Make a choice." Before I could respond, the shadows leapt at me, covering my vision. All I felt was the cold grip tightening around my throat, and then everything went dark. Light pierced through the darkness, but it felt wrong. Too bright, harsh against my eyelids. I blinked, struggling to adjust. Where was I? The shadows were gone, replaced by the blinding fluorescent lights of a fast food restaurant. I was slumped in a booth, a half-eaten burger in front of me, the faint hum of the fryer bringing an uncomfortable sense of normalcy. But the unease lingered, crawling under my skin. I glanced around, every corner of the room feeling unfamiliar, as if the place had shifted while I was out. "Are you okay?" A voice broke through my thoughts. I looked up to see Marissa, one of my coworkers, her brow furrowed with concern. "You were talking in your sleep. It sounded intense." I rubbed my temples, trying to shake off the remnants of the nightmare. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just weird dreams." "Weird like that time with the kid and the talking fries?" she joked, but her eyes remained wary. I forced a laugh, swallowing hard. The memory of the shadows and that man came rushing back, and I noticed something unusual about Marissa. Her eyes flickered, just for a moment, to a darker shade. "Marissa, are you feeling okay?" I asked, a knot tightening in my stomach. "What? Of course I am." She laughed nervously, but there was something off about her smile. A flash of red crossed her pupils, like a trick of the light. "You need to get back to work, or Mr. Thompson will have your head." I shook my head, rising unsteadily. "Right, yeah." I moved toward the kitchen, trying to ignore the pressing feeling that I hadn't escaped whatever darkness had haunted me. The fryer sputtered, and the air was thick with the smell of grease. Then it struck me how strange the restaurant seemed. The usual bustle was muted. I looked around. The tables were occupied by odd groups, or maybe it was just my perception. People hunched over their meals, faces shrouded in shadow. I noticed figures at the back booth whispering to one another. As if sensing my gaze, one of them turned, locking eyes with me. A flash of red ignited in the depths of their gaze, just like Marissa's. Cold dread washed over me. "Hey, don't stare," Marissa said, trying to pull me back, but I couldn't look away. Something about the group felt familiar, but I couldn't place how. "They're just customers. From the last month." The realization hit me, sharp and unsettling. I recalled the unusual encounters after closing hours, the people who came in with complaints that made little sense. I had brushed them off as oddities, chalked them up to tiredness and stress, but now their presence felt alive, charged. "What do you want?" I blurted, my voice shaky. "Why are you here?" The figure at the booth grinned, their mouth widening too far. "Oh, just waiting for you to join us again. You wouldn't want to leave us hanging, would you?" Panic surged inside me. Whatever was lurking in those shadows had seeped into my life, infecting it like a disease. I stumbled back, urgency coursing through me. "Get behind the counter," I shouted to Marissa, but it felt too late. I could see the shadows rising, snaking around the tables, creeping toward me. Then, everything dimmed. The world fading away as the darkness closed in, just like before. I gasped, my lungs burning as I fought to breathe in the suffocating darkness. My heart raced, and the familiar hum of the fryer faded into an echo. My surroundings twisted, molded by a pressure I couldn't comprehend. Then, just like that, the oppressive void shattered. Light burst back into existence, brighter than before. But this time, I was alone. The restaurant was empty, an eerie silence engulfing the place. Tables were set, and the leftover litter from earlier was still scattered about, yet there wasn't a soul in sight. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. No response came, just the distant thrum of the fluorescent lights as they flickered overhead. I felt foolish, standing there, trying to convince myself I wasn't alone. I took a cautious step toward the register. The frying oil glistened in the corner, mocking my unease with how mundane it all appeared. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this was a trap, a stage set for something I couldn't yet see. Suddenly, a cold draft rushed through the room, making the hair on my arms stand on end. A flicker of movement caught my eye in the back booth. I edged closer, heart pounding in my chest. Was it the same group? Were they still there? When I got closer, I froze. The booth was empty, but the air was thick. I strained to listen, and I could have sworn I heard faint whispers laced with sinister laughter. The sound slithered through my mind, nudging at memories I didn't want to recall. "Get back! You don't belong!" I shouted, my voice cracking. I couldn't fight the urge to flee, but my legs felt cemented to the floor. Just then, the lights flickered again, and I caught a glimpse of someone standing just beyond the edge of the illumination. "Join us." The voice was sweet, tempting. I couldn't make out who or what it was, but the cadence wrapped around me like a noose. The red eyes pierced through the darkness, larger than any human should possess. The booth began to vibrate, strange energies swirling like a tempest in the dim light. I had to break free. I rallied myself, stepping back before sprinting for the kitchen. My breath was quick and ragged as I pushed the door open, barreling into the safety of the space behind the counter. Then I remembered my phone. Desperate, I yanked it from my pocket and pressed the screen. The light was a lifeline, illuminating the tiny area, and I dialed 911, hands shaking as I struggled to maintain composure. "There's something happening here." The phone slipped from my grasp as a shadow emerged from the darkness behind the fryer. I dropped to the floor, scraping my palms against the greasy tile. When I glanced back, that same shadow loomed larger, spilling across the room, its edges curling like smoke. "Why do you keep running?" it hissed, a voice that chilled my blood. "You belong to us." My mind was racing. I needed to escape, to break out of this nightmare. As I scrambled back to my feet, I felt the cold grip of fear squeeze my chest. I didn't know what else was waiting for me out there. Then, I realized I had left a door open, an exit I hadn't used before. It was time to get out while I could. With one last glance at the dark silhouette that writhed before me, I sprinted toward the door, my pulse pounding in my ears. Just as I reached for the handle, a loud bang echoed through the empty restaurant, and the lights went out again. That's when I saw it. I stood frozen, engulfed in the darkness that swallowed every last scrap of light from the fluorescent bulbs. Panic clawed at my throat as the disembodied whispers resumed, swirling around me, a multitude of voices tethered to the shadows. "You can't escape us," they hushed, the cold rhythm of desperation guiding their words. Gripping the handle of the door, I tried to remember how to breathe. I was convinced I had one last chance to break free. I twisted the handle and flung the door open, out into the night that had inexplicably turned still, as if suspended in time. My feet hit the pavement outside, and a surge of adrenaline propelled me forward, deeper into the gloom of the parking lot. But there was an unsettling quiet. Not a soul stirred, not a car idled, just the lonely hum of the flickering streetlight. My heart thudded in my chest, an echo against the oppressive silence. The weight of the fear I'd been carrying threatened to crush me, but I fought to center myself. The realization struck that the shadows, they were gone, but their chilling presence lingered like a scent. I paused, scanning the lot. Had I truly escaped, or simply stumbled into another layer of their web? An area just beyond the parking lot beckoned, an unseen door to whatever lay beneath the surface of reality. My instincts warned me against investigating further, but I was drawn in, compelled by the need to understand. Then I saw the figure standing near my car, shrouded in darkness but illuminated by the ghostly light. My breath caught as I realized it was Alex. My heart raced faster than my thoughts could organize. He looked just as he had before, that maniacal grin stretched across his face, eyes glinting with that unnatural brightness. "Did you really think you could leave?" he whispered, his voice thrilling and haunting. I backed away instinctively, the recognition erupting like flame in the cracks of my resolve. "They've been waiting, you know." His words wrapped around my mind tighter than my own thoughts. I have to go back," I stammered out, but doubt slithered into my heart. "This isn't you, Alex. It is now." The darkness behind him seemed to pulse with a life of its own, swelling like breath. A voice joined ours from somewhere deep in the shadows, low and raspy. "She can't leave until she understands what we've become." The shadows danced and flickered, revealing visions of darkness consumed and the faces of old friends who had become distorted echoes of themselves. "Why?" I breathed, the word barely escaping my lips. "What do you want from me?" "Everything," Alex replied with a cruel smile, his features softening into a familiar warmth that felt both comforting and treacherous. "All your fear, your regret, it feeds us." "Feed you what?" I demanded, shaking my head as fragments of memories rushed through my mind. The drive-through orders, the darkness enveloping me, the laughter. Each second wrapped around my chest, suffocating the fragile hope I clung to. "I won't be part of this." Yet, as I turned to run, the shadows swirled and encircled my ankles, shocking me into stillness. I glanced over my shoulder, horrified as the darkness thickened at Alex's command. "You can't escape so easily," he said, voice laced with an eerie calm, tinged with an excitement that felt like poison. The laughter returned, childish, manic, filling the air, disorienting. It echoed from the depths of my mind, pulling me back, luring me to understand. "Stay and eat with us," Alex called, his form becoming more tranquil, more horrifying. "Join us in this shadow feast. You'll never feel alone again." I shook my head, tears welling up as I fought against the feelings clawing at me. I suddenly felt them all, the faces fused with mine, merging in a grotesque tapestry of despair. "No!" I screeched, feeling the tropes of their transformation claw at my will. But the shadows continued to surge, inching ever closer. I couldn't give in. I had made a choice. Turning back toward the door, I shoved against those clammy tendrils grasping me, forcing myself away from the temptation of their chaos. Screaming, I lunged for the door, the only clear escape, and the moment I crossed through, the world behind me shuddered. The shadows screamed and shrieked, a cacophony of rage and disappointment. Blinding light enveloped me, pounding its warmth into my skin, with echoes of furious laughter trailing behind me, taunting me. On the other side of that door, I stumbled out into a world that felt vibrantly alive in sharp contrast. But as I blinked against the light, the oppressive dread began to creep back. I looked around, gasping with a debilitating sense of disorientation. The street lay empty before me, with remnants of the fast food joint flickering down the block, just out of reach, brimming with memories I wished to bury. I turned back to find myself alone, nearly spinning at the strange normalcy of the world around me. I had escaped, but could I ever truly be free? The unmistakable sense of hunger clutching at my gut reminded me that whatever darkness I had encountered still lingered beyond comprehension. I had won this battle, but as I took a hesitant step forward, the emptiness echoed more questions than it offered answers. The line between reality and something else had blurred, and I could still hear them, the whispers, the children's laughter, and Alex's final haunting words. I pressed forward, determination forged anew beneath the layers of uncertainty, reminding myself I had choices yet to make. Still, as I walked into the night, the shadows continued to stretch and linger just at the corners of my sight, forever a reminder that darkness can never be fully escaped. It can only be danced around.